Hello everyone and welcome back to Through the Dragon Glass. I want to make sure that everyone, before we get started, hits that subscribe button, thumbs up, and notification bell, and make sure you tell a friend about me. It really helps out if you guys just leave comments. I'm more likely to get views. The algorithm will be better for me if there are more comments on my videos, so feel free to leave comments regardless of whether they are coherent or not. Just leave some comments for me. We are on Chapter 8 of The Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullins, World War I. Let's get started. It was very clear that there wouldn't be a world war if the United States didn't create the Federal Reserve. As I mentioned in past videos, Theodore Roosevelt took votes away from the very popular President Taft. If Theodore hadn't run, President Taft would have been elected and there would have been no Federal Reserve or war. Eustace Mullins says, the finances of Europe are so involved that the government may ask whether war, with all its terrible changes, is not preferable to the maintenance of such a precarious and costly peace. If the military preparations of Europe did not end in war, they may well end in the bankruptcy of the states, or in such follies lead neither to war nor ruin, then they assuredly point to industrial and economic revolution. From 1887 to 1914, bankrupt countries were funded and survived with the help of the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds were spread out all over Europe and helped maintain Europe's finances. In order for the U.S. to survive, they had to take out loans which accumulated debt quickly.
And one more thing, the house we wanted last year is back on the market. They're asking 1.5.
We'll make them an offer, but come in at 1.4.
Okay, I love you, baby.
I love you too.
Okay, bye.
Does anybody know whose phone this is?
Bankers had everything they needed to start a war, such as large armies, universal military services, and modern weapons. As much as bankers wanted a war, they knew European countries did not have good enough economies to get involved in a war. In 1947, the citizens of the United States lent $25 billion to the Allies, which was never paid back, and the interest was paid back to the bankers. During the time period, American citizens had unfavorable feelings of the Germans, even though there was no actual political or economic dispute. The majority of Germans lived in the U.S. and made up half of the immigration population. Germany almost became the national language of the U.S., but it lost by a small margin. An American ambassador of Turkey asked why the U.S. was intent on starting a war with Germany. The ambassador replied, "We Americans are going to war for a moral principle. Sending millions of men to their death in the name of morals is nothing less than evil."
Wow, that was pretty brutal even by my standard.
In 1915, Wilson paid the bankers back for buying the White House for him. He continued to give loans to the Allies despite objection from cabinet members.
I object that this guy also broke my apartment to shit. Yeah. What? And you know what else? I object that he's not going to have any money to pay me after he pays back all the money he stole from the hospital.
Don't say I stole, you're my lawyer.
By 1917, Kuhn, Loeb and Company and the Morgans had sent almost $2 billion in loans to the Allies. The bankers also financed peace movements that were really movements that would lead to war. On March 15, 1970, the U.S. ambassador to Britain, Walter Page, sent a classified letter to President Wilson. The Morgans could no longer financially support both England and France as war drew near.
It's pretty bad, Emperor Snowball. We're gonna need to do another operation.
Anything for my precious Morty.
Sir, as your accountant, I must advise you that these medical expenses are putting you in serious financial jeopardy. You could lose your kingdom.
The Allies desperately needed credit, and a war with Germany would cause the U.S. to give direct credit to the Allies. In 1916, the U.S. government started preparing for war by stocking up on large amount of war supplies.
And it's war! And it's war! Gather the forces!
To pay for these war supplies, the government started taxing people's income and used the Federal Reserve System. Woodrow Wilson stated it is manifestly imperative that there should be a complete mobilization of the banking reserve of the United States. The burden and the privilege of the Allied loans must be shared by every banking institute in the country. I believe that the cooperation on the part of the banks is a patriotic duty at this time, and the membership of the Federal Reserve System is a distinct and significant evidence of patriotism. Wilson really meant without the Federal Reserve, the war could not be financed and the U.S. would not have ever entered.
It's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here.
After the war, Wilson said, "The World War was a matter of economic rivalry." When asked by Senate if Germany had committed no acts of war or injustices to the United States, would we still have entered the war? Wilson replied, "I do think so." Wilson later praised Russia, who at the time were slaughtering their own people. He said, "Assurance has been adding to our hope for the future peace of the world by the wonderful and heartening things that have been happening in the last few weeks in Russia. Here is a fit partner for a league of honor." Wilson loved Russia so much, he looked past the 66 million people that were being slaughtered. When the Communist Revolution was starting to fail, Wilson gave the Bolsheviks regime $100 million from the U.S. Special Emergency War Fund. After the communist victory, Kuhn-Loeb Company converted 600 million rupees into gold. Upon entering the war, Wilson put his favorite bankers in charge. Bernard Barch was head of the War Industry Board, which controlled factories. Eugene Mayer was head of the War Finance Corporation, which was in charge of loans, and Paul Warburg was in control of the nation's banking system. Paul Warburg's brother, Max, was head of the German Secret Service, and Paul could have been charged with treason. Paul told Wilson he had two brothers in Germany that were bankers, and Wilson didn't care. Wilson won a second term because he had kept the U.S. out of the war. People were unaware that Wilson had planned on entering the war after the election. In March of 1960, Wilson began his campaign to enter the war. I want to thank everyone for listening. Hit that thumbs up, notification bell, subscribe button, tell a friend about me, and please leave a comment. See you next time, guys. Thanks.